Are we clear? So that's important. And so the degree or the decree, quality, the nature, and the extent of interest which a person has in real property, and comprehend that real property is not what you call real estate. There are two different categories. So in real property is usually referred in to us and as an estate. So when you're making reference to an estate, you're talking about all inheritances. You're talking about all hereditaments, which would include the corporal as well as the incorporeal. Therefore, you're dealing with your traditions and customs that supersede Roman law, that supersede legislated law, but harmonize what is known universally as quote unquote the common law. So the common law comes from the customs and traditions of established right of inheritance and hereditaments which are related to your estate and often referred to in Asiatic, African, Berber culture and history as the house of. As an example, if you say, like if I'm referring to the estate of Dr. Naila, in African culture, we would call it the house of Naila. And so when you hear that term or that phrase, the house of, you're talking about the estate of. It encompasses so broad an area that the everyday being is not informed of. This is why you see me take so much these positions over the years that I take, because I know these things must be fixed with our people if you're going to repair them or help repair them. Because remember, they themselves must be willing. Because if the will and intent is not there, you're not doing anything but bringing dirt back into your house that needs to be repaired. And so even like we see when Noble Drawley set up the old Canaanite temple, he said, with these lessons, you can get your house in order. So to get your house in order is to get your nation in order. You look at the constructive carpentry and building principles are actually the same. You're just dealing with what is called the corporal and the incorporeal. And thus you would call it the aggregate and the abstract, or the concrete and the spiritual, or the physical and spiritual. Those principles are synonymous in linguistic form to demonstrate both the aggregate or the physical realm of civil operations as well as the principled law or positive law and legacy operations that support, i.e., the moral or what you call moral, ethical, spiritual maintenance of that. And that's where morals and ethics come in. And also usually presented under what you would call religious or operations or philosophical operations. And this is where you have the divine and national movement. It is taking in consideration the natural operations of the divine sovereign right of the human experience. That's fact. And so when you study what Noble Drawley did, all of these things were actually taken in consideration. And so people often recall him or call him Professor Drew. And people who haven't necessarily studied his work intently or analyzed it, including remembering where he said the half has not been told, miss it when they get caught up in the emotional approach that many people take in relationship to Noble Drawley and the Moorish Divine and National Movement. So the hereditament principle of the corporal and the incorporeal must always be taken in consideration. All right. Now, in relationship to estate, we continue. In another sense, estate designates the property, real or personal, in which one has a right or interest, the subject matter of ownership, the corpus of property. Thus, we speak of a valuable estate, all my estate, quote unquote, separate estate, quote unquote, trust estate, quote unquote, etc. Now, thus, also, estate in its meaning in the classification of property into real estate and personal, quote unquote, estate, etc., is demonstrated over the years in many so-called case laws that will support the actual clear, distinct meaning or causal action in relationship to estate. And so the word estate is a word of great extension and comprehends every species of property, real and personal. Estate describes both the corpus and the extent of interest, etc., all together. And so that is important. So when estate is used in some connections, it signifies everything of which riches or fortune may consist, etc. And it goes on, but that should give you a rough basic comprehension of estate. And so in that nature of estate, as we've always told people, always relate it to your status. And so we're going to go to status to show you its relationship to your estate. Because often it is not necessarily taken in consideration until someone points it out to you. And this is why I've always taken the position of doing the work. Don't need a title. We need to do the work. Everything will fix itself. In other words, if you fix the house, the wind will stop coming in. So will the culprits. Get your house in order. Status is the standing, the state, or the condition. Status is the legal relation of the individual to the rest of the community. Status involves the rights, the duties, the capacities, and the incapacities which determine a person to a given class. Status is a legal, personal relationship, not temporary in its nature, nor terminable at the mere will of the parties, with which third persons and the state are concerned. And while the term status implies relation, it is not a mere relation. Why? Because status also means estate. Status means estate because it signifies the condition. It signifies the circumstances in which one stands with regard to his or her property, etc. That is very, very clear. Status and estate are related. And so when you come into the status, this is where identity of pedigree is very important, commonly known on the planet as nativity or nationality, which ties you to a descended estate of people related to an aggregate part of Midgard or Earth, etc. That's the aggregate soil. And now you have what is known as aggregate or territorial jurisdiction matters, which comes into place. And this is where the titles play part in, where the sultans or the emirs, etc., or the empresses have jurisdictional authority over an identified territorial jurisdiction with identified officers applied or assigned by the sovereign right of the people, clearly known and publicly known, to deal with jurisdictional powers that are clearly written, clearly known, not hidden, not veiled, not vague, in relationship to any other counterclaim that may be made by any other feudal lords or others, etc., making claim of heirship on lands or estates or hereditaments that have no right vested in them, i.e., which is a knowledge that counters colonial operations of claim, which is what we're suffering from right now. This is back where the work needs to be done. So keep that in mind. So when Noble Drew Ali told the Moors to, if they don't do anything else, declare their nationality, he's actually tying us politically back to our lost estate. But then the knowledge that goes with it, that causes that what you call honorable allegiance, etc., must be in place, that the heirs would be loosely referred to, and not always properly, but loosely referred to as the nationals, and that sometimes as the subjects or citizens, etc., would have a known pattern or knowledge, documented knowledge of allegiance to that nation state, etc. All of those principles must be in place, and that is part of the healing. So you must know some of these things that were removed from us to put us in this social political position so that we could be vampirized or exploited by colonial operations under the unum sanctum operations, which is in fact not an opinion. That's what's been going on. That's the mission of the reparations, etc., under the establishment of the Moorish Divine and National Movement to refer to or to imply the obligations that already exist before you were born to be enforced. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to activate the law supreme of the aggregate land that was already in place but has been breached, trespassed against, and ignored. And people are ignoring it because people keep wanting to be they want five feathers in their fez, and so I'm the new emir of the territory type thing. Well, it's fine if that's what you need, but I say if this other work is not being done before the title is taken, or even while it's taken, in council with the people, with publications to support it, etc., we're going to continue to have these problems. So I'm not condemning, I'm supporting. But I'm also saying I'm also pragmatic, realistic, and I'm saying the reparation and the healing of our nation has no place for ego, has no place for the desiring of a title, has every place for workers. And I'm a fisherman and a carpenter and a builder, and I use those principles in my everyday affairs.
Aaliyah Bay asked me to ask if you know what the blue kachina is surrounding the sun.
Bettina?
Kachina, the blue kachina. I believe that has to do with the Hopi.
Oh, or what we call the energy, or you would.
They were talking about that as a symbol, I believe, of
or what
sign
we
of
sometimes
something.
refer to as the nimbus, or
No,
we call it
the blue kachina. There's like a return of when that appears. It's supposed to signal.
Oh yes, well again, that's the energy that we also call, some people call it the return of the white buffalo type thing, and we're actually talking about the coming of the new age or the evolution, because humanity is actually going through an evolutionary stage, and some people will call it the Christ degree, or where the activation of the pineal gland. Some will call it the Kundalini. Some will call it the Nirvana. But essentially, some will call the new era of time or the age of Aquarius, etc. All of those references actually the activation of the pineal gland or the Christ degree or the Christ degree. And the fact of the matter is, like all other living operations on the planet, the sun has that effect on also the evolution of man. This is again why over the years we mentioned, particularly in most recent times, people need to recognize that as the firmament of Midgard has gone through the Futon belt, you notice that the sun is whiter, less yellow, more white. And so that means you have less constriction of the debris that has made up the Futon belt. And so you have actually different energy. But even with that, not unlike the seeds of plant life, etc., there's an activation in the evolution of man spurred by the energies of the planets, etc. And this is where you get Cosmo, or what you call the crescent and the star symbolism, which is also symbolizing the sun, the moon, the stars, and the effect of them, their energies on the planet. And so when you look at that nimbus, or what you call that halo around the sun, and the changes that take place, you would talk about the era of time, or the arriving of humankind on another evolutionary scale. And this is also why it is comprehended that while we're doing a lot of analysis of what we'll call moral and ethical construction of government, it is for the exercising of the mind, but we also recognize is so that we'll release some of these things from the old Piscean era that we have adopted, knowing that while we're studying them to comprehend what got us to where we are, a lot of those things we will not be doing in the future. In other words, we're evolving, to keep it simple.
Here's a question, one other question from Abdul Bay TV. Wants to know if it's true that many politicians are locked up in Gitmo by Mr. T.
Well, as we've told people in these last few years, and particularly in these last 4 years, when we reminded people, and some people have taken it wrong, that Donald J. Trump is assigned. And one of the things that people need to know when they're talking about, as an example, the Abraham Lincoln administration, when the members of the Circle Church and Chancery of the Bar Association infiltrated the Congress for the Republic with the intention of overthrowing, which is one of which the assassination of Abraham Lincoln was part of that covert activity, etc., and converted, overthrew the Republic, thus their obligation to treaties and Constitution to enforce the Inquisition operations, and people will just cover it up with the statement saying that they changed the Republic to a corporation. No, that's a lie. They had no authority to do that. The deal of it is the Republic still stood. It's just that the people who are the Republic were being attacked, and many of us lost knowledge that all this foundation of this estate operations here, that we are the rightful heirs. And then we, over the years, have been misdirected by COINTELPRO operatives, which is a later name given to, say, Boule operatives and many of your minions who have been working for Rome, who sent our people on this civil rights march all around the place, Negro citizen BS crap that has actually designed under the 14th constructed amendment that was never properly ratified in order to steal the birthright of the Moors. And under the guise of naturalization, not nationalization, naturalization, from a legal perspective, the Moors lost their nationality. However, I always challenge scholars to prove the existence of a so-called U.S. identity card of citizenship, which never existed. And so there's an implied contract of obligation of service to a de facto corporation political system of body politics of the Bar Association of British Accredited Registry, and thus accepting a debt for national services that were never actually executed, because we cannot be and never were citizens of the U.S. corporation company, but we're in fact under corporal colonial operations right on. And of course, this is where the restoration of the right of estate comes from with the Moorish Divan and National Movement, with the restoration of the lost estate of the Moors. And of course, by people not knowing the political background, they have a tendency to look at the Moorish Divan and National Movement only from a pseudo religious perspective. And this is why there's, in many instances, a lot of schism that exists within the Moorish movement over these decades, for people having a lack of knowledge of what the real politics are. And they would take a perspective based on leader guys who take positions of sheiks, grand governors, etc., without consideration of the real obligations of diversity of nationality and the distinguishing of the legitimate platforms of controversy relative to persons and property in relationship to diversity, particularly Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, with the enforcement of all treaties, and Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States, with the obligations in place for the enforcement of all treaties, etc., being the supreme law of the land, which has not been taught to the people. And therefore, very often, their concept of looking at that Constitution has been wrong, not comprehending that the Constitution and the presidency is the obligation of those corporate foreign bodies doing business at Morocco and limitations of their jurisdictional powers in relationship to both the people of the land and even to their own members, etc., with all treaties in force. This is again why many people, when they're talking about nation states, etc., they will always bring up titles, but they won't bring up the issue of diversity and explain it clearly to people, and also the lawful venue by which those things are executed whenever there's a controversy between persons or property relative to status and estate, etc. That's where you see in the Constitution, and I suggest that many of you who are out there read Article 3, that's the judicial platform for the Republic, and you will see that the lawful courts that were set up under the jurisdiction of the United States is ambassadors, diplomats, and consulars. And when you're dealing with treaty enforcement, logically, that is consular court. And this is again why people who really know this have been offended over the years of me promoting the restoration of the activities of Article 3 courts of diversity of consular venue relative to diversity of nationality to properly address the issues of the Aboriginal people of the land, because that's the established venue. And of course, people who have been benefiting from perpetrating the Bar Association pilfering of our people, logically, politically don't support that, although it's written right there, and try to present the dogmatic position that I made that up. Or they say that the people who have been listening to some of the things that I've taught would say, oh, they're Tajites, rather than do the research for themselves and see that you have traitors among your own. And this is back to what Sister was talking about earlier. Because this is, again, why we always try to share information with the people. Because the people must clean up their house, and they must shed themselves of these parasites and opportunists among our own who have been pretending to love our people. This is why you'll see many of them that when you get into the details of this information, all of a sudden, with them, Noble Drawley is no longer the prophet. And you'll see them making statements like that. Why? Because it exposes them, because they're traitors. And that's not opinion. You do research and you'll see it for yourself. And this is again why we've had difficulty over the years. And of course, people among the nationals of the land who are not aware of the real history get caught in personalities rather than looking at the principled facts and then measuring or vetting the people accordingly. And because many people have not been truthfully and properly teaching the principles of nationality and the relationships between government and nationals and citizens and the different statuses and subjects, etc., and it has not been made clear to them, they get caught in this gray area. And that's what has allowed these opportunists and thieves among our own who have been secretly working for the Bar Association to pilfer our people for hundreds and thousands of notes, etc., under the guise of commercial credit systems, etc., under the guise of rescuing them to their estate, when in fact they are the heirs of the estate. And so they have them buying and selling aspects of their own estate from foreign European courier members of the Bar Association and their helpers among our own who've been pilfering our people and, of course, prolonging the problem. And like the sister says, we're going to have to start shedding these people, and we're going to have to start recognizing that and stop taking things personal and start vetting people according to principle and stop making this stuff complex, because it isn't complex and never was. Just because the Bar Association made a law process complex artificially in order to deny our people due process, and keep in mind, justice delayed is justice denied. And keep in mind, the fundamental principles of supreme law of the land are to be put in place, easily recognized, comprehended, and within the capacity of the average man, woman, and intelligent child to comprehend. And they have made all of this stuff complex. This is why, even again, as Dr. Nail has set up close and personal, as we did the last time, I shared with people Chapter 1 of American law, government law and sovereignty, because also the priesthood and the politicians have been putting a bad spin or a negative spin on people who even mention the word sovereign, because that's divine. That's not given to you by government. Keep that in mind. They don't want you to know that. They think that's some kind of privilege under if you sign some commercial agreement and make some financial statement to receive credit from the Bar Association through the Jesuit order of the Federal Reserve to get some credit notes from them and then be able to do some transacted business rather than tying you back to your actual lost estate, which they've been living on at your expense as belligerent fofers under the guise of trustee. This is again why they don't teach trust law. So their motive is not honorable. But of course they know that people that don't know these fundamentals get caught up in, oh, I follow this person. You don't follow anybody. What you do, you study what people do and let it become your own and do some cross-reference and research. Then you get together with other honorable people, getting the worms out from under you, the parasites from around you, the narcissistic title holders from around you that are more interested in guiding their hands into your pockets than they are in liberating the people. And this is again why over the years, because I already know people will go through developmental stages. And I've always reminded people some of the things you do today, you will not be doing tomorrow. But I also know that our people need to go through some of these experiences. And at the same time, I also know aware, and I was aware that the time would come that the nations of the earth would stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds, and you would have the feedback loop, which I've been telling people for years. And so now you got all these trade embargoes, and so now people are starting to feel it, aren't they? So you're not going to have to keep on arguing with these people to make them comprehend what Noble Drawley did when he established the divine national movement, because it has a purpose. And now you can also see those who have been countering it because it's becoming more and more obvious because it's coming to the surface, and you can discern for yourself. My concern and my energy is involved in bringing up certain issues that help people make discernment, so that people, by their own will and intent, can help fix this thing, because it's your birthright. It's not somebody's good idea that you're a club member to. And it's so important for that to be clear to you. And this is also for people over the years that keep trying to assign me to things that my mother didn't assign me to. My mother assigned me to what I'm doing. I'm a fisherman. I'm a carpenter. I'm a builder. That's what I do. And for those who have those skills, and if that's what their mother made them for, go ahead and do it. More power to you.
I'm trying to get to that one. There were a lot of questions in here pertaining to how one should nationalize. I mean, because there's probably as many responses.
Make that very clear to me.
How? I mean, they're literally questions about how to nationalize, and so.
Oh yeah. Now, and this is. Give me that treaty book again, please. Yeah, very important. Because this is very important, and this is where people need to understand or comprehend. And again, I'm going to remind you how this stuff is often redundant. Now, as far as the Naturalization Act, and now this goes with the citizenship, and as you all know, that they're having problems here, not only at North America, but around the world with territorial jurisdictional issues being breached and people in the political realm being forced to address it. And they'll call it foreign innocent immigrants coming across the Mexican border or the Canadian border, etc. And so now the issues of territorial jurisdiction is being addressed reluctantly and creating a bunch of problems. But the masses have not been told that the issue that are being addressed with the so-called immigrant problem and families being separated, etc., is territorial jurisdiction. And for them to actually have legitimate claim of argument or counter argument in the international venue of what is called international law, Now you're talking back to what is known as the common law or nature's law. Now you got to name the mothers. So now the issue of nationality is being brought up, even though they're not defining it to the people, because in order to have argument, they got to identify themselves. So how is these foreign Europeans here? And I'm not supporting one side or another. I want you to look at, examine this, because this is for your teaching. This is for your instruction. This is for your comprehension. When they're talking about the different people coming from South American islands and South American nations up to North America under the United States, remember, the United States is a private corporation. The political jurisdiction is America, and they are Americans. Most of these people that they're calling immigrants. Now they're caught because they're still trying to promote that the United States Corporation Company is the country. As a matter of fact, they'll often say America, which is also a false paradigm without explanation, because that's the continent. You see the problem that they're having right now? So the things that they're having right now, problems that they're having right now, Noble Draw lived just over 100 years ago to the Moors of the land. And now these things are being placed before you in your experience for your learning. So now in relationship to even the issue of the Moors here and their nationality, we're going to go here in the treaty book. And that printing is direct from the congressional records, etc. And I left the printing in its original form rather than typing it over. And as I said before, because I already know that we have operatives among our own. A lot of people were sent around that like the sister said earlier, that you trusted. I already know, because a lot of people, everybody has something to offer. However, I already knew in due time they would expose themselves. A lot of them mad at me now, don't want to speak to me. I don't care. Well, I already knew many of them that were agents from the beginning. But we're in a mess. You got to learn to work with people. And you got to learn that, like the sister said earlier, we're going to have to shed some of these people. But without knowledge, you won't know how to vet them. So here we go. I want you to look in this. And so that is page 460. And this is a print off, not the actual pages in the book. This is for your reference, for your research. Citizenship of the United States, expatriation, etc. Statement. There are, however, numerous treaties and conventions between the various Christian countries and the Moorish Empire, by means of which citizenship in this country is defined. But as I understand from the above acknowledged instruction, that's plural, instructions, that it is not the desire of the department to call for a report upon such lines, which means they don't want to expose, they don't want to make this, public controversy. I will therefore confine these remarks to general conditions existing, which may possibly be of some use in connection with the information desired. Number one, citizenship in Morocco may be said to be governed by the laws pertaining to the same in other countries. So these are universal principles. Keep this in mind. With the exception that all persons residing in Morocco who cannot prove foreign citizenship or protection are considered ipso jure as Moorish subjects. That means you got to prove that you ain't Moorish. If you're here, North America, which is really Morocco, under the occupation of the United States Corporation Company, because you can see right here, citizenship of the United States, and you can see right here, there it is, Morocco. It's not hidden, and it's not unknown that these people are Moors. Number 2 and 3, Moorish subjects lost their nationality only by becoming naturalized in or protected by another country having treaty relations with the Moorish Empire. It was established by the Convention of Madrid, concluded July the 3rd, 1880, etc. And so you see why they've been promoting the 14th Amendment Negro Acts and telling our people that they're Negroes instead of Moors, which would make them stock property. And that's what we've been suffering from. Now you understand why Noble Drawley say declare your nationality, because you got to clear your status up to even make claim to your estate. That's documented. And how many of your so-called Moorish leader guys avoid what I just said? That's documented. They'll tell people Taji guy made that stuff up. Lying their keisters off. That's why a lot of people are upset with me. And it's exposing a lot of people who've been around me for quite some time. They thought I didn't see them. I thought I see them. But I'm a warrior. I'm in the field. I'm getting my hands dirty. I don't need a fez. I don't need my turban. I don't need the jewelry. I'm down to earth, Taji guy with the cheap sneaks, getting work done. And those of you who need title, go ahead and have fun. I want to get the work done. I want to see my children and my children's children liberated. I don't need no crown.
Here's a question from Lamont Moy. It says, Emperor stated they, D-E-Y, were Caucasians. Who were the days?
Caucasians are Moors. Duh. This goes back to the linguistic form. Caucasus Israel, under the rulership of Aunt, who was known as Aunt Hagar, who ruled the Yucatan, who ruled the Moabite nation in southwest of Mexico, known as the Yucatan. And her grave right now is in Mecca on the other side. How come they won't say that? Because the name that was given to the hybrid came from Yaqub Kushidus, Israel, etc. That's where the name come from that was given to the hybrid for sake of the hybrid experiments. Because there's no such thing as Caucasian in the concept that has been adopted in the modern world. You need to know your Moorish history. So when you're making these statements, the assumption on the connotative level of animal husbandry must not be established as the genetic and political reality as it has been promoted, because it's a false paradigm.
Did I just hear you say that the Caucasians were Moors?
Because who you think Yaqub was? He's a scientist.
But
his middle name was given to them.
But was that not an experiment that created a hybridization of Moors?
Now
and
you
other
got it. Yes,
beings?
now they're called amalgamated Moors, also referred to in the Bible as the Great Amalgamation.
Would those also be the lepers?
Yeah, exactly. That was put behind the lesion, behind the rock. So that's why the rocks or the mountains were called the Caucasus Mountains. It was named after the great experimenter with the 12 women scientists, who you rarely hear talking about. You only hear usually of Yaqub. And instead of saying Yaqub, they'll say Jacob ladder.
They also
people need to really know. You need to know your Moorish history.
They also say that the women scientists that carried the experiment, they try to give them an extraterrestrial origin. They talk about Enki and Enlil.
Don't we all know? Let's be real. Don't we all know that all of us are not necessarily from this particular planet?
Oh yeah.
And that we have peopled other aspects of the planet, and in this particular hemisphere of the galaxy, of this solar system, the humanoid figure, though taking variable forms, is common to this particular solar system. That's a fact. Now, the deal of it is the hybriding. This is where you go into, for those of you who have Oxford dictionaries. Now, here's your Oxfords. Let me see. See your Oxford dictionaries. You go look up hybrid. And hybrid, and they will tell you, and this is again why they don't have certain dictionaries in our communities, and this is due to the Sigmund Freud mind control operations in the education system. They will tell you in reference to the Albions, because remember where we place them in what you call England or land of Angles, what you call England, etc., is that we when we ruled, that area was called Albion after we put the hybrids there behind the rock. This is where you get the Caucasian designation given to them from the scientists, etc. So that was given to them. This is also where you have the heterogeneous exposure, even in Oxford Dictionary, and they will say to you, and I think it's in entry around entry 8 or something like this. This is for you scholars to do your research, and they will say, we Englishmen are but heterogeneous hybrids at best. You will not find that in your regular dictionaries because of the animal husbandry dispensation, etc., by Sigmund Freud and adopted by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902. With those, now they're not going to go into that logically because you will recognize that that you have what you would call the hybrid rebellion, and this is demonstrated to you in movie form, like the Nemesis of the Wicked Witch of the West, and then the good Witch of the East, and they're in battle representing matriarchy. Then you have Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz representing matriarch, and then you have the Yellow Brick Road, which represents the zodiac constitution principle of the Canaanite Moabite nation cosmology, etc. And then you have the Anthropopithecus Pongidae with wings, representing the hybriding of off-world, etc., i.e., you would call them the flying monkeys. And then you have the Wizard of Oz, which represents the dogma systems of the representation of the Godhead principle, the corruption of humanity with the corruption of religion. All of that's in the Wizard of Oz. And it's also in many other movie forms that they tell you your history. And then you'll see, for those of you who have been into movies, look at the keep in mind, Moor in French is Moreau. So keep that in mind. That in French is a branch of Latin, Moorish Latin. And then you're going back to Iberia. And this is why a lot of people who really don't know the history of the takeover of Iberia in Europe will say, oh, well, Moor is French. French is African, you dummies. You know, our people, and the scholars have done this to our people. And the real deal of it is, that's why even in more recent years, because people who really don't know this history of Central America and the Yucatan, you know, keep thinking that Caucasian is really the pale-skinned species of the human stock in its hybrid form. Well, yes, that's a name given to them, but they're actually given the experimental term of albine or albion. This is where you get the term albino. And when you do the research and you all go into your old dictionaries, the land that you called England is known as Albion. Why? Because that's where we took the albinos. This is where it's talked in the Septuaginta in the Bible as the people with the lepers. They also, now you understand in Ireland when they talk about the leprechaun and the gold, etc., and the little green men, etc., and the golden rainbow and the pot of gold at the end. And then you talk about, as a matter of fact, in your King Alfred, for them, this is named after King Alfred in the Ireland area. and you'll talk about Tag Day, or when they ran the Moors, they say the snakes out of Ireland. That's you. They were killing off the Moors, the Dubs, and the Picts, etc. So in many ways, they're actually exposing the history. But if you don't know how we got to where we are, you see these things, and if no one makes you reconnected to it, you dismiss it as if it belongs to the Paleolith, when actually they genocided you out in Iberia, or what you call Europa, and now they're doing it to you in North America, which is silent weapons for quiet wars. They're continuing their Inquisition operations. That's why I make the distinction, and particularly as of late, hybrid Europeans, to make the distinction between the hybrids, which is a mixture of Pangaea and human species, and with some off-world. This is why they're hybrids. And this is also why they're warring on you. You need to understand, because they're not the people of the earth. They're hybrids. Now, that's not to be used negatively. That's the truth of the human walk. And if you are not ready to handle that, many people in secret societies know this information, but they only speak of it in attic chambers around the world. And so because they've hidden this history from the people keep looking at these as an original people. They're not original. They are hybrids. And the two particular heterogeneous species is the Pangaea and the humanoid. And that makes what you know as the Albion, or the Caucasian tag, from the experiments coming from Patagonia, that is now called Argentina. And so when you do the research and you start looking at the problems that a man named Hitler had with trying to eliminate some of those problems that were inculcated in Germany, that also was breaking them, etc., you're going to find that some of the history that was told to you about Hitler is incorrect. Now, you're getting in an uncomfortable area with a lot of people. And so some of these things are never talked about openly because you will be sanctioned. Because one of the first things that the Circle Church Circle Church and Curia members must do is pledge all economic operations of the United States Corporation Company of the Jesuit order to what they call Yisrael. Now tell me that's not a fact. So when you start learning who's really been running the banks, who's been running the schools, who runs the United States, who runs the judicial system and the POW camps, everybody wants to get persimmon mouth. It's the hybrid Europeans. Sometimes referred to as Khazarian, sometimes referred to as the Cabal, sometimes referred to as the Satanists, etc. But that's what's been happening to you and the world to this very day. And it's important for you to comprehend that so that you can start healing the Moorish nation. Because without the knowledge of how you got to this position, you will be fighting the wrong fight. That's the fact, y'all.
Okay. So DD, it says there are groups claiming to have AB bloodline of Jesus / Abraham Lincoln's Armenian lineage, saying they want sovereignty restored. However, without mention of Moors. I've been saying that. What does that mean for us?
Now,
I've been asking
remember
you that.
what we said to people for years. I said, remember I said this for years before this stuff came out with this cover up with this biological warfare, which they admit to right here, right? And I said, some people mistake when I say that Trump is a sign. I said, but keep this in mind. They're battling over our estate. Yeshua, because it ain't no Jesus. Jesus is a password. And that's why symbolically for the knowledge, Jesus is used connotatively as meaning justice when the knowledge comes out. Or when the truth comes out, it will make the people free. So what you call Jesus is Yeshua ben Yosef. And so they were Canaanite Moabite blood. This is, again, why they'll give you signals even in all your secret societies. They'll say, who was Ruth the Moabitess? And they'll say Ruth the Moabitess was Jesus' great-great-grandmother. So who is the Moabites? Moabites are what? A branch of the old Canaanites from the land of Canaan, which is now called Israel. Isn't that interesting? Right next to Hikupta, that you know is Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Oh, so the real Sabians are Moors, aren't they? So it seems like somebody who's been claiming to be JEW are not who they claim to be. And they've been pretending to be you and killing you off. So we need to heal the nation, don't we? Without a knowledge of what happened to you, you will be distracted by people who are placed among you to distract you into not things that are not, that's not that they're not important, but they're not where your cure is. I just remind you that, so you need discernment. And I'm not saying don't do certain things. I say do everything that you do with knowledge and discernment. And what we try to do here at the House of Reawakening Minds is share with you a lot of knowledge that we know others have, but they stay away from, because it will kill their little clubs and it will take their hands out your pockets. And it'll get you to stop sacrificing the next generation with a bunch of beliefs and then start directing them to a knowledge. And with knowledge, the truth comes. And with the truth comes, so does the liberation and the restoration of the estate. So know ye the truth, and the truth will make you free. I'm more interested in that than a title, but I'm not condemning titles.
Ava asked, how is all this going to matter if they're fixing to shut down the grids and shove people into camps?
Of course, that's their plan. Of course, that's their plan. Now, this is your plan. The time has come, apparently, that the issue of nation states are coming up every day, and borderlines of territorial jurisdiction are coming up, and they're going to be forced to address what they haven't been addressing. So meanwhile, with the King Alfred plan, the genocide and biological warfare operations is already in place, isn't it? Isn't it? But the knowledge of the people will what? Start causing the people to say, I think I ought to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and confess my own and honor my mothers and fathers so I can have right of inheritance. Oh, I think some of these things that people have been saying every year have a relationship, but not the way they thought it was when they were in these club organizations under the name of religion and dogma. It was never placed to them in the real world. Now we are all facing it. This is why I said a couple of years ago, people talk all kind of trash about their spirituality. Well, now you're going to have to prove you God. I ain't arguing with you. Do your thing. I'm about to work. And we all have shadow work to do. So let's work on our lower self, and Mother Nature will open up what you need. Because it's proving that the people won't buy or sell without that mark or license from the beast. Oh, so the beast is the number of a man, isn't it? Oh, you thought it was some Baphomet signal somewhere. No, he got 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, and he's been doing a lot of dirty stuff to you, and you thought he was your government. Thought he was your banker. Thought he was your lawyer. They're Roman Curia members and Satanists of the Dark Order. And they've been ruling this planet. And the cleanup is on its way, because the earth is your house. Get your house in order. Repair the nation. We need healing. And I'm going to tell you bluntly, because this stuff is coming out as we speak, not just later, because you're experiencing it now. A lot of people are going to need consolation and solace systems, because a lot of people aren't going to be able to handle necessarily, they're not going to be willing to handle the ugly that they're going to be exposed to. And before it gets better, it's going to get worse. And this is my response to the sister and to the statement. I support your statement in caring and everything, but I'm also realistic that in war there's casualties. All the people, this is not an issue, although it could be an issue of saving the world, because whosoever will, let them come. Whosoever will, let them hear. And whoever so will, let them serve Rome, and Rome is going to devour them. That's the intent. It doesn't have to happen, but only by your will. And so what are we doing? We're doing our little part of trying to help in this great missionary work of uplifting fallen humanity. And often by dealing with subject matters and information that many people over the decades have deliberately avoided. They're more interested in titles, and they're more interested in being liked by the people, and they're more interested in having their hands in the people's pockets. Oh, and I'm not denying that it takes finance to do things. I know that. However, that's not where I'm coming from. So I don't need a title. That's again for those who keep thinking I need a title. I don't need a title. I'm tied to God with the cheap sneaks. Get over it.
So to reiterate that earlier question about whether you accepted that, but the answer was no.
Exactly. Because the deal, see, this is what must be comprehended too. And I'm saying this with all due respect and love and caring for all of our people. People have been groomed under animal husbandry to continue to do this practice of what they call the sacrificial lamb. And so the concept of human sacrifice is still with us, even though it's been hidden. And so people's dynamics of thinking in their so-called spiritual development is thinking that they need to sacrifice Jesus type thing, not recognizing that that's Rome's method of operations. And that's not Jesus's philosophy. Jesus was a target. Yeshua was a target for sacrifice. That's not his philosophy. And so they keep associating the sacrifice principle with Yeshua when it should be associated with Rome, who are bloodlusters. They come as the makers or bringers of peace when actually they're the peace breakers. They're showing it openly now because they don't have the time to keep on BSing you. They're doing it openly now. They're calling it mandate.
Mandate.
And mandate is not law. I think y'all better go in your law dictionaries and look up mandate.
Why don't you read it? What does it say in there?
Sticking?
What does it say in Black's Law about a mandate?
Oh, let's go to it. And you know, this is again, Dr. Naila, why they don't teach our people, you know, fundamental laws. Mm-hmm. So mandate is a command, an order, or a direction, written or oral, which court is authorized to give and a person is bound to obey. Mandate is a judicial command or precept proceeding from a court of court or judicial officer directing the proper officer to enforce a judgment, sentence, or decree. A mandate is a precept or an order issued upon the decision of an appeal or a writ of error, directing action to be taken or disposition to be made of case by inferior court. And in some of the state jurisdictions, the name mandate has been substituted for mandamus. Mandate is a substitute for mandamus. Is why you see me all over years talking about for warranto, a writ, an agreement of jurisdiction, and an agreement of mandamus. So as a formal title of that writ, etc. A bailment of property in regard to which the bailee engages to do some act without regard. So it's clearly that it is totally a judicial act from an inferior court not having a constitutional foundation whatsoever. It's a decree made by an incompetent, inferior court. Logically, not Article 3, and logically, not constitutional, i.e., mandate.
Okay. So, Richard Amonrod basis, can you talk about constructing a lien against corrupted officials?
And this is where, now let's look, this is point. So for those who comprehend those principles, look up surety bond. Write that down, surety bond. The same way that you would issue a writ or a claim against any other insurance bond, etc., is in itself a lis pendens in its nature against someone who trespasses against your right or your estate. Now we're back to the word estate, aren't we? And your status, isn't it? That's called the lien. And guess what happened when a couple of them are lodged against persons who claim to have authority that don't? The insurance companies will no longer back their bond because it will kill the commissioner's office. This is why they don't teach the people that anybody in political position that claim any authority by law must carry a surety or equity bond. And what that lien is a claim against their bond. That's why you do both quo warrantos and averments of jurisdictions, and you do research on anyone that claims authority because they have an equity bond, make a claim on it. That's a lien.
Can you explain what?
And now you're going to go ahead.
Explain quo warranto.
Quo warranto is what is known as a DOAO, or the authorized legitimate delegation of authority by which an office or an officer holds office, with a time of enactment and a termination time, and is always by law variably constructed under Constitution law, by no other methodology. And that's what is known as, when the question comes before any person who claims authority, are you, he or she, an Article 3 judicial constitutional officer? Just that simple. And if they don't answer it, you already know they're a fraud, and they ain't going to answer it because they're actually foreign corporate operatives. That's why they don't teach people to do quo warrantos. And this is back to even when Drew Ali said enforce the Constitution. The more you understand that, the more you will understand when you enforce the Constitution, you're enforcing treaties, which supersede the Constitution. And it's the supreme law of the land. And the judges of every state must abide thereby and must support it. And that includes the judicial officers, the executive, etc., legislative, etc. And any laws of any state to the contrary has no standing whatsoever. That's why it says notwithstanding. So read Article 3 of the Constitution for the United States. Read Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution for the United States. Read Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States. And read Act 6 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws of the Moorish Divine and National Movement via the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and the Moorish Science Temple of America, and see that they obviously harmonize. And that's as a counter to many of the naysayers that have been infiltrated among us.
Question is, can you explain apostille number 1?
Apostille is generally still you're dealing with jurisdiction. So and this is back to my argument with many people, and many people who keep calling the de facto operatives government. They're seeking for them to give them, or what you call, not unlike say a fee simple type claim or an allodial claim. They have no